Yeah. But anyway, let's jump in. Hello, Madeleine.
Hello, Steve.
Madeleine, sipping. Tell us what you're sipping today. Tell us the tea part of this Yi session.
I am sipping 2017 Yiwu Mountain Raw Pu'er.
And how cool is this? I actually know this. I have a bag of this tea myself, although I'm not sipping it because we didn't agree which tea we would be drinking. So I'm on the what's it called? Hot brandy. I really recommend this, particularly to you, Rob, if you're watching. Hot brandy 2018. They do a whole number of years at Y2T. It's like it's a white and black yin yang mix. Incredible. And brews, I'm like on the 7th, 8th infusion. Amazing. Do you top up? So like you because we were having a chat before and you were going through a few infusions. When you start to feel like it's not delivering, do you kind of put in a few sprinkles?
I never have, but that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Good. Maybe I'll add a few.
I find that instead of starting with a whole new guy one and also getting probably a bit too caffeinated, over caffeinated, a few sprinkles can really liven things up. Yeah. We've already been doing some tea and yap, but we're going to do some tea and yi and yap. And we're going to try out something that I haven't done on this channel yet, which is a 2-for-1er, which is I'd mainly like to focus around your question, but I'm also going to say that I've got one going as well. And the idea being, can the yi actually do both of them? Be like, yeah, okay, got yours with the same answer. That would be the supposition or the hypothesis. I believe it can.
It's like if you can't make a decision and you flip a coin and you're disappointed in the outcome, well, then you have your answer. You have revealed what you actually wanted. And so you have permission to do what you actually wanted anyway, because you have revealed your preference by the coin flip, giving you the wrong answer.
Yeah.
So, anything like this is an invitation to think about things in a new way, to think about the question from a new, unexpected perspective, and that is what consultation of any text or random wisdom will offer. As for its mystical properties, I am agnostic.
Yeah. You are speaking very much about the yi. You sound very much like Harmon Mesker, my Enneagram 5 neurodivergent I Ching guru. Because that's his line. That's his line as well. It's like, random wisdom, meaningful chance, or meaningful, some kind of meaningful articulation. He's like, well, it doesn't really matter where it comes from or why. I don't think about the metaphysics of it. I don't think about where it's coming from or anything. It's just there. So that would be Harmon. I don't know, but that's maybe not you though.
What we see, the meaning we see in anything has more to do with our own eyes and our own perception than it does with the thing itself.
Yeah. What a fool believes he sees. I think the Doobie Brothers probably put it best, right?
Call me a fool then.
Call us fools. because I have a lot of quite strong beliefs, and unfortunately, they make me see things that are not always worth seeing, but also make me see things that I'm very grateful to have seen.
You can always change your beliefs if you don't like if you don't like the fruit.
Yeah. So let me very narcissistically and neurodivergently, triple N, neurodivergent narcissistic nitwit is what I've decided now to identify as a narcissistic neurodivergent nitwit. Let me just quickly say what my question is, but I'd then like my question to sort of stand to one side, and we'll invite it back on stage later. But let me just quickly pop in my question. But I want to really take on your question, because your question in some way is also tied into my question. So this is my question, right? Which of course I can't say without a 1 minute setup. So forgive me, but this is what happens if you're triple N. So I don't know if you've ever heard of this idea I came across recently, that essentially there are basically three, I'm essentialist, we'll talk about this. There are three core self narratives that we're either compelled to take on or that we choose to take on. And one of them is, like the hero narrative, like I choose what my life is about and how I'm going to live and all of those, good things. The other is the healer narrative. So it's so that who I am, and it's all about being a healer and being there for others and all of that. And the third narrative is the victim narrative. And the way to work out very quickly which one you fall into is to say, do you feel like you're lucky? Do you feel like you're leading a somewhat lucky, charmed life? And those people who say, no, I'm terribly unlucky. They're the victims. And the other two are like either the healer or the helper, right? So I had that going on in my head. And then I watched this film called All My Friends Hate Me, which I think is just amazing. I'll put the link in and watch that film. It's an amazing film. And I was like, yeah, maybe all my friends do hate me, or at least are somewhat indifferent to me. And isn't that a bit of a victim kind of line to be casting, which fits in with the triple N identification? But that is my question. That is my question to the year. My question to the year is, why do all my friends hate me? They don't. That's kind of nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But more like, why are they largely indifferent to me? And by indifferent, we were sort of talking about this earlier. What I mean by that is that my what I would call SX4 need to engage at a very deep and intense level with them is never met in the way that I fantasize or would enjoy. So that's my question.
I feel like a combination, for sure, and maybe oscillate among the bounce around between those. Obviously, I try to spend as little time as possible in the victim space, but of course, there are things that are outside of our control, and it's maybe part of compassion for ourselves that we acknowledge that sometimes the things that are outside of our control hurt us. And so maybe it doesn't have to be, contrary to pop therapeutic belief, it doesn't necessarily need to be shameful to occasionally spend some time consoling the inner victim, but not at the expense of the agentic authoritative power of the hero or the healer. Maybe it's the inner relationships between those forces. What did you call them? Not forces. You called them
Self-narratives.
self-narratives.
Yeah.
Maybe those self-narratives are in narrative and relationship with each other as well, so that the healer can console the victim and uh, and the hero can take proper action to alleviate the suffering in ourselves and in the world,
Yeah,
and to
I like
be
that.
excellent.
Yeah, and we were sort of saying, you have an interest in IFS. That feels quite kind of a sort of an IFS parts framing in internal family systems. Um, and there's a lot of wisdom there in that. So that's my question. Why? Which also makes me laugh because it makes me think of this film. And it makes me think of my next YouTube video, which is going to be called. So, so that's me. Tell us about your question.
So I am interested in the solution to my tendency to catastrophize. Um, Not so much in a victim way, and that this is a result of things that are outside of my control, but in the sense that in the ways, with regard to the things that are within my control, when I fall short or make mistakes, I have a tendency to catastrophize. And it's not comfortable. I'm not convinced it's helpful. I would like to find a strategy to or a way to change my beliefs about the world where I would not be so prone to catastrophizing when I make mistakes.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, as we know, it doesn't have to be formulated as a question. It could just be, okay, that. But if you were to make it more of a kind of a pinpointed query, how would you shape that? Like, is it how can I, how, like, I mean, the way I see it is if you've got a mind that's going to go there, it's going to go there, but it's more like, what is, right? What part of yourself you need to bring in, or what part of yourself needs to be sort of dialoguing with the inner catastrophist, but in a way that's going to genuinely calm them down, bring some grounding, whatever it is. So is it like the question of like, which part of myself do I need to bring more online when I'm catastrophizing, or something else? What is the question?
I mean, you asked a why question. Why do my friends hate me? Maybe I
Yeah.
should ask, why do I catastrophize?
Yeah. Two why questions. Like it. I like it. Are we going to go with that?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
It's amazing the power of asking a question.
Yes.
Just saying the words, why do I catastrophize? Like, immediately my brain starts coming up with answers.
Yeah.
So let's see what the E says.
Well, but I also want to maybe hear some of those because I think the ye, right, the reasons your brain comes up with are maybe some of the reasons that GPT would come up with, whereas I find the ye, it goes ideally, which is why we're using it, it goes somewhere beyond even that, right? So just out of interest, what is the initial brain capture in response to why do you break? Because it's like you've put it to your mind, why do you catastrophize? And the catastrophizing mind is going, well, because blah, blah, blah. What is the blah blah blah?
Well, I don't know if it's my catastrophizing mind that's answering, but
Oh, okay.
it
Yeah.
would ultimately be, I think, that I don't trust in the compassion of others to forgive and give me the benefit of the doubt in the like I feel like I need to be impeccable in order to be acceptable.
Hmm.
Probably.
So it's about trust, because that also initially when we were talking, you also mentioned this other word risk, right? Trust and risk. So what's the risk aspect to the catastrophizing domain?
Because sometimes the worst really will happen. Sometimes there will be no compassion or contextualization, and sometimes, I mean, things really are outside. I mean, the people's responses to my actions, including my mistakes, really are outside of my control. And sometimes I might be fired, or I might be cut out of somebody's life, or I might be unforgiven for whatever transgression. And if the remedy to catastrophizing were to trust people more, then trust inevitably involves risk. And so, therefore, the evidence that is returned to me from the world as a result of my trusting it might be to betray that trust. My trust might be unfounded, is the risk.
Absolutely. Okay, let's do it. So, well, you've you've got some coins. I mean, I guess as it is kind of predominantly your question, although my question is riding on top of that in an interesting way, hopefully. Do you want to throw the coins and tell me the lines?
I think it'd probably be. I think it'd probably be better for you to throw the coins. I don't have any, any
Okay, I can
coins
throw the
within
coins
reach.
as long as you're cool with that. Because well, yeah. Again, some people who are maybe not the Harmon Meskers of this world, right, would be like, yeah, but the coins have got to touch my hand for then my question to be, all of that. But I don't think you're one of those people. So you're okay with me throwing the coins for your
And
question.
you have a question also. And the whole idea with this
That's right.
was
We
that
both got skin in the game. Yeah.
we would be addressing your question also.
Two. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Cool. I like it. Okay. So here we go. Drum roll. Blah blah. So one silver, which means it's a head, which means it's a yang or a young line. Wood or wind over fire. And that, because of the moving lines, then changes, potentially, maybe if certain, I don't know, um, paradigms are applied or practices are applied, that becomes wood or wind over lake, which I mean, before we were cut off, you were like, oh, that seems a bit dangerous. And I guess it does, but it feels like the perfect casting in a way for catastrophe. Or, or even and equally for kind of, I don't know, social paranoia or fear or right, or even hatred, the just anger. Um,
So, from
what
what I
what do you
understand,
make of, yeah, what do you make of wood versus wind? And also, what do you even make of that trigram? Wood and wind? I've always been like, how can it be wood and wind? I know the reasons vaguely, but What do you make of wood, wind over fire, just to begin with?
So the lower trigram is supposed to symbolize the self, and the upper trigram, like the context, right? Or the outside world, the
Potentially,
circumstance.
yeah. Although for catastrophe, let's stay with catastrophe and risk and trust. I guess for catastrophe, um, I can see certainly with wind and fire, maybe more than wood and fire, although it depends how the fire is set up, right? You can you can see the sort of the mind seems to take a kind of spark of something fearful and waft it around until maybe something until it does find some wood, whatever that wood is, maybe some the shame or judgment you're talking earlier about, the remove the what's it, the splinter in the eye, the beam in the eye, that Christ idea. It just feels so apt somehow, particularly wind over fire, just to encapsulate what the mind does when it catastrophizes, wouldn't you say?
So, yes, I mean, the wind can blow the fire up into an inferno.
Yeah.
And
But it does need
adding
wood.
wood,
It needs wood for that
yeah, they're
almost
both
to happen.
both the wood and the wind are the fuel for the fire. And so
Yeah.
maybe it's that whatever spark of an idea or a fear is overblown or overfed with fuel. Maybe it's just a matter of acknowledging the thought and being like, it's okay that I fear this thing. I recognize that I fear this thing, but I will give it no more fuel. But as far as your question
But hang on a
goes,
second. Let's stay with yours because that's
who's
a
the
read.
therapist here? Who's the therapist here?
No, but that's a reading. But I wonder if the I Ching is also the Yi. Again, I haven't come yet to. I want us to look at also what the judgment is on that, right? But I feel like it's also sort of your question was, why do I catastrophize? And I feel the Yi is saying at a very elemental level, you catastrophize because the mind in some way is on fire, and sometimes fire meets the element of wind or wood. So the wood feeds the fire, it feeds a certain kind of flame, or the wind will make a thought like, oh shit, did I say that? Is that going to be a problem for me? Will make it feel bigger, or more threatening. I mean, it is giving you the answer, isn't it? Or something like that. It's saying, think about what wind and wood and fire do together, and you've understood how the mind catastrophizes. Is it not saying that to you?
It could.
And what is it between the interaction of those three things that um, is encapsulated in your or resonates with your catastrophic mind when it catastrophizes?
Like,
Yeah, what is it between fire and wood and wind um it's like the year saying, well, you've got to understand, it's just fire and wood and wind. Once you've understood how those three elements
so
um
here's the thing.
interact, you've
Like
you've you've got your answer.
the context matters. Like an uncontrolled fire plus wood plus wind could burn thousands of acres of pristine forest and just completely destroy the entire landscape. But fire plus wood plus wind in a forge, in a controlled setting like a forge or like a kiln, could be the crucible for great art. And
Exactly.
so maybe the
Or
correct
even
reading.
great peace, because I mean, lake is also a kind of fulfillment very often, right? Traditionally, peace, kind of like, okay, now you're at the true substance of I don't know, the restful or the peaceful mind and the peaceful heart, right? That feels to me very much Lake. Sorry, I
So,
interrupted you.
so maybe the catastrophizing is the wildfire that destroys everything. The proper course is to harness the power of the fire and the fuel in order to create something that brings great peace, such as a clay teapot forged in the fire of a kiln
Yeah, yeah,
full of water and dried leaves, very, very nice dried leaves.
yeah,
And so maybe the reading is to harness the destructive power of the fire, the potentially destructive power of an overfueled fire in order to create forge something that can bring peace.
yeah. Yeah, it's in a way taking, but also taking the fire to, yeah, to meet the wood, if you like, that is, yes, is going to burn in a productive way. It's like, when we're being paranoid, okay, well, what is it one could productively do? Is there any free will, control, authority that one can make, like, I don't know, writing an email or whatever the case may be? Or is it more a case of we're back to the trust, like that what's required is to really sort of sit in the midst of the flames because some part of you needs to be willing to be destroyed. This is the risk you were talking about, right? I don't know. Um, like, okay, maybe this image that I have, this idealized image that I have of other people that they may hold in their mind of me or me of them or whatever, that needs to go, even if it means I lose my job or I don't know. I'm very freely associative at this moment. Does any of that connect with anything in you, or shall we look at the judgment, which is very interesting, I think.
What about your question?
We'll
How does
come
this?
to my question because I think my question is genuinely also answered by this. But let's say what the hexagram is, right? For those who are maybe who haven't looked it up yet, it is the family. And the judgment is the perseverance of the woman, not the man. The perseverance of the woman furthers. How does how does that interact with your idea of catastrophe, particularly in the way that you've set it up, where it does feel very much like a kind of um, social it feels quite connected to that social instinct, your version of catastrophizing, that you will lose face or you will be seen as not I don't know, not sufficient in some way, and will either be punished or even just yeah, you'll be dropped or blocked or you'll lose something anyway in that process, but more from another was my sense of it, right? So what does that mean if we're talking now, if we bring in the concept of the family?
Well, it's interesting because we were talking about internal family systems earlier, and in internal family systems, there's literally the firefighter whose job it is
Yeah.
to keep the whole world from burning down by any means necessary. Um,
And is the mistrustful, let's just call it slightly, I don't know, whatever, catastrophizing part of your mind, is that, does that feel like a firefighter? And what is it? Because again, that's the paradox of the firefighters. People would be like, but he's not doing anything to help, or she's not doing anything to help, right? They're just adding, they're the firefighter, but they bring fire with them. Well, that's crazy, right? But of course, that's how it works, because it's not logical, it's psychological. So how does your, is that your firefighter, the catastrophist, in some way?
I'm not sure. It could be the inner child. I mean, most fears kind of arise from the inner child. Um, so the firefighter might be in a panic because of the way the inner child is overblowing the severity of the situation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
So the firefighter's more like the wind in a way that kind of passes the heat of that fiery inner child. They're like, ah, and and kind of carries it, might carry it in a good way because it could carry it to the ears of someone who might be able to help us, but it could also carry it, it can also amplify it maybe and make it feel like the whole world is falling apart when in fact it's a sort of coming from a kind of a scared, vulnerable child place. Is it in that sense?
um, I'm not sure, but I keep thinking about the other side of the wind in that it's not just the oxygen that's fueling the fire, it's also the smoke
Hmm.
that's rising from the fire, which is can be a signal, like a smoke signal. So maybe it's just that that signal needs to be heard or seen or in order for the alarm to be called off. Like
Yeah.
once the message is received, then
Or for the alarm to be heard by a, a part, something within us that maybe doesn't always come at that moment, but is needed, right? To, yeah, that fire is calling, that smoke signal is calling something out of you. It's saying which part, which of your inner family, if you like, right? Uh, which of those, I guess we were talking more about like, kind of almost like good inner parental figures. I don't know, I suppose in IFS they call it self, self, the capital S. I've never really gone with that. I see it more as like an inner manager or an inner parent or an inner sister or brother. In my inner world, it is actually a family, right? Which inner family member is going to be most helpful to the um, frightened or worried child?
obviously the it says right in the judgment it's the feminine figure.
The perseverance of the woman. But,
Yeah.
but what aspect of that archetype? Because, I mean, what aspect of the feminine? What aspect of, again, you might say, I suppose, the yin rather than the yang? Um,
So when I think of the perfect encapsulation of the feminine, I always think of, I'm going to look up the quote because it's so perfect, exactly as written.
She looked upon Gimli, who sat glowering and sad, and she smiled, and the dwarf hearing the names given in his own ancient tongue, looked up and met her eyes, and it seemed to him that he looked suddenly into the heart of an enemy, and saw there love and understanding. Wonder came into his face, and then he smiled in answer.
It's the gist of it is that it's that which calms all tempests.
Right. Yeah. When the fire is not good fire being productive fire, fire that cooks, fire that whatever cauterizes a wound, whatever. But when the fire is not good, and we know the difference between good and bad fire, then we need some feminine part of the psyche to to make that transformation occur.
So it's interesting what you say about the fire reaching for the sky. Like it's almost like the earth reaching for the sky.
Yeah.
And the
Or
something
even
like
flailing. I mean, it's not because it's never going to get there, right? For me,
right.
fire is desperation at times. That's bad fire. It's like, oh, and again, it's that wanting as well. It's like, oh, I want this, or I want you, or whatever the case may be, right? It's that clinging. It's the clinging fire, right?
Well,
It's the needy clinging fire.
I would think of it as a like an aspiration towards an unattainable ideal.
Yeah.
And so in the case of my catastrophizing when I fail to live up to my own impeccable standards, that is and the remedy being lake. I mean, lake is the contentment, and lake is not striving for anything. Lake is at rest, essentially, um,
Yeah.
at peace. And maybe the peace comes when we cease our strivings towards an unattainable ideal.
Mm. Now you're talking to my question.
Well, that's a good
Oh, yeah.
segue
But
then.
also, it makes me think of something you said previously. Your kind of, um, you know, very brief, but I think perfectly expressed definition of kind of happiness, or what's the, how to be happy, and you being someone who at least has worked towards, at least now is, let's say that your self narrative is more that of hero healer rather than victim. Um, your your route to happiness is, just remind me.
You decide to be happy.
Yeah, and it feels, but bring that into this, because this is very interesting, because in a way, right? Imagine saying to the fire, well, you decide to be a lake. It's just not, it's just, that is never going to happen. But I could imagine, yes, again, some feminine transformative presence comes in and soothes, appeases, whatever it does, puts out the fire, and in the place of the fire, um, over time, there is rain and then there is this lake. I could see that happening.
Or maybe you just move from the fire to the lake. Maybe you're having the fire on the beach and then you decide to go for a swim. It doesn't necessarily have to be a quenching of the fire,
That's
just
true.
a experiential shift,
Yeah,
whereas instead of
absolutely.
being instead of experiencing the fire, you experience the lake, go for a swim.
Mm. And that feels like a good note to sort of start drawing to a close because I'm starting to feel guilty because you said beforehand, as long as we could just record for this amount of time, because I'd like to go for a walk and I can see the light fading behind you, and I'm like, shit, I don't want to stop this woman from getting her lake moment. So,
We haven't addressed your question though.
okay, but that's cool because we've got like 10 minutes. That's when the recording ends anyway, almost. Because I kind of almost feel in a way, which no, it's weird, doesn't it? It doesn't sound like a neurodivergent narcissist, but I almost feel like my question has been that well, maybe this is because I'm a narcissist, right? I feel like we've been talking about that question all the way through, even whilst talking about your question. But you give me yeah, what would be your synthesis? I think you would do a really good synthesis of that. What is your synthesis of? In terms of my question, why do my friends hate me? In other words, why are they indifferent to me? In other words, why are they, for the most part, not able to really meet the um, high standards, I guess, right? Yeah, of my fantasy about what kind of friendships we might have. Um, why are they? Why are they not doing that? Why are they not giving me what I want?
Do you want my honest answer?
You can give me any answer. I'm up for all of them.
Could it be that, like a fire, you maybe have been treating your friendships like something to be consumed? And, like you require food and warmth and tea and these various things, like you require friendship as a resource, and so you just go and just take a bite out of your friends because you're hungry for that
Yeah, but they could
resource.
come and have a bite out of me as well. Look, they could, look right here. They could take a big old. I'm like Christ. I'm like feed of my flesh. I don't care. I just want a nibble. I just want a nibble of yours. No, no, no. Absolutely.
Right, but and
No, you're right. You're right.
they
Yeah.
could offer that bite to you as well, but if they're not offering and you're coming around hungry all the time,
I'm not hungry all the time.
okay. um
Just, just, just every couple of days. Um,
but I mean, it's like when in relationships, I mean, we offer bids for attention,
yeah,
and the other person has the choice whether to respond to that bid or not.
yeah.
And ultimately other people have wills of their own,
Mm.
and internal lives we can't imagine, and sometimes they're not going to respond to our bids.
No, I know all of that. And again, context, etc. It's not like, well, I don't know. I feel this has been
You
my,
don't feel entitled
no, I don't
to,
feel no, I actually don't feel entitled. It's
but
more a
why
case
do
of,
they hate you then?
it's more a case of, no, it is actually more a case of, oh, I have really, I really thought it's like if I send a friend a message like, hey, oh, I saw this and I thought about you. I genuinely did think of them and I did see this and I thought they would genuinely be interested in it. And then well, they don't even respond. Um, but I think you're right. But again, I guess another way of flipping that in a way that um, maybe hope I don't know makes me seem a little bit less entitled, a little bit less as a neurodivergent narcissist, even though I do identify as such. And this would certainly seem to be good fuel for that fire. Um, I would perhaps also say that, my most recent understanding of what relationships really are about, thanks to good old Dr. Orion. I don't know. Do you ever watch this guy's channel? Do you ever?
I have. I have. I
Yeah.
think he's a victim of audience capture, and that he's kind of become more, I don't know if sensationalistic is the word, but more like validating of his audience's resentments
I
than
maybe,
I
but I
find.
think, I mean, the thing is, I have a love-hate relationship with him as I do with everyone. But I have really, I actually think he's been pretty consistent, and I think he says some hard truths to the victims of this world, the self-pitying male victims, and I'm one of them, right? I think he says some pretty hard truths, but very meaningful truths. But one, I mean, his central premise, right, is that relationships are you can I don't know, make them into this sort of get cake or gâteau, or you can turn them into some sort of delicacy, but actually fundamentally they're about an exchange of value, working out what do you have? What do I have? What can we actually genuinely offer each other? And ideally, both parties, at least it's certainly in friendships, maybe all relationships, being quite clear about that. It's an overt contract rather than a covert contract of sorts. In other words, okay, I'm the sort of person who give you this and you like that, and I know that you like that, and I know that you can get this from me fairly consistently and reliably, and vice versa. And of course, again, we can never get it as consistently and reliably as we might want, but I think there is also something to be said in that maybe I just haven't found yet those friend connections where some of that genuine parity, if you like, is there. But
I
that
think
starts,
what's
I don't know, that starts to feel kind of narcissistic or victimy again. Yeah.
I think what's missing from Orion's calculations there is a spirit of charity. Like, yes, of course, you need to like manage expectations and, communicate about, what sort of things, make you feel good, for lack of a better word. But for it to be like transactional, like that, the opportunity to give and to live in charity, live a life like from a place of charity. I mean, and maybe charity is the wrong word. I mean,
No,
that's the word that's
charity is you have really, that is a very, very key word. I'm going to actually write it down. It's a very key word because you're right. I am lacking in charity. But I can do that. I can actually do that for family to a certain extent. I was with my parents earlier. We were going for this walk around Rickmansworth Lake, and my mother was, rabbiting on about this and that and the other. And she was like, and I was being charitable towards her because she's an elderly woman, and right. I mean, like, what am I going to say? This is a bit boring. Um, or you're being annoying. No. And we do that. You're right. To be able to do that and to be able to come into contact with more of that.
it compounds. It
You're right.
compounds.
I need to do
I
more of that.
I play a game with myself where every person that I come in contact with, whether it's a cashier at the store or whatever, to radiate an energy, even in a small way, say a small thing that will make their day better. And it compounds in the community and it compounds in a relationship. And a relationship is more than the sum of its parts when everyone is just giving without the expectation of getting. Then everyone gets, exponentially more than they put in. But what I disagree with Orion about is like whenever you're just trying to negotiate, like if you do this for me, then
Oh,
I'll
no, no,
do
no, no,
that
no.
for
The
you.
negotiation never happens, I would say. It shouldn't happen explicitly. Um, it's more about when the connection is working. This is a good way of understanding why it's working, and when it's not, it's not. But saying that, we are running out of time here, literally 2 minutes. So, and which is good because, right, we've got like a hard end, and that's going to then allow you to go out into and have a walk, and it's going to allow me to feel like I haven't kept you over time. So that's excellent. But I want to drop in just a last little thing for anyone who's still watching us now. And I would say, take all of that you have said, which I think, again, it really speaks to my philosophical and particularly my sort of psychotherapeutic, spiritual heart. But then I would say, take all of that and drop it into the realm of this film, All My Friends Hate Me. And guess what? I'm going to put a little link to the film down below. Don't tell anyone. Shh, shh, shh. It's just a little link. You can watch it if you like, but don't tell anyone. Particularly you, Rob. I know you don't like it when I do this. Watch that film, because when you take all of this into the realm of existential horror, which is also the realm of catastrophe, which is also the place where, right, where our human minds don't have that capacity to connect to these more transcendent virtues. I would say, to you, whose team are you on? Are you on Team Pete? Because Pete is the main protagonist. And I think it's very interesting for those people who end the film going, yeah, I'm on Team Pete. And all of those other people are see you next Tuesday people. And or are you on the case of charity and like, no, Pete, you should have been more charitable and da 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 da. That would be my challenge to the viewer. And as you're a viewer, I'm going
Let you
to
know.
I'm going to drop that. I'm going to drop that your way. But as we've got less than a minute left, I want to also thank you from the most lake, the deepest lake parts of my being. Thank you for doing this TNU with me. It's been an utter delight.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Hey, that's great.
You know the problem with you, don't you? Can't take a fucking joke.
Keep shining in, shining